She was 18, a cheerleader, and absolutely convinced she'd walk out of that courthouse a free woman. The jury had other plans. This is the story of Brooke Skylar Richardson, the Ohio teenager whose case divided America and left everyone asking the same question: was she a cold-blooded killer or a terrified young woman who made terrible choices? It started in May 2017, when police found human remains buried in the backyard of a house in Carlisle, Ohio. What they discovered would lead them to a high school cheerleader who had kept the darkest secret imaginable. Skylar Richardson had given birth in secret, and according to prosecutors, she had murdered her newborn daughter and buried her body behind her family home. But here's where this case gets complicated. Skylar didn't just hide a pregnancy for months. She went to prom while pregnant. She posed for pictures, danced, and smiled like any other teenager celebrating the end of high school. 2 days later, she gave birth alone in her bathroom, in the middle of the night. The investigation began when Skylar's doctor received a concerning phone call. She had been to see Dr. Casey Boyce about getting birth control in July 2017. During that appointment, she broke down and told him she had been pregnant and delivered the baby at home. The doctor was legally required to report this to authorities. And that's when everything unraveled for Skylar. When police questioned her, Skylar initially denied everything, but faced with evidence, she eventually confessed to burying the baby in her backyard. What she told investigators next would become the centerpiece of the prosecution's case against her. In a recorded interview, Skylar said the baby might have been born alive, and then made a statement that would haunt the courtroom. "I think I killed her. I squeezed her." The text messages revealed during the trial painted a picture that prosecutors said showed Skylar's true priorities. In the days before prom, while pregnant, she texted her mother, "I'm just in freak-out mode. I want to look amazing again more than anything." Her mother encouraged her to burn calories to fit into her prom dress. After giving birth and allegedly killing the baby, Skylar texted her mother again, this time saying she was literally speechless with how happy she was about how her belly looked. Another message read, "I am literally so excited now just for dinner to wear something cute. My belly is back now. I am taking this opportunity to make it amazing." Before we dive deeper into the courtroom drama that had the whole country picking sides, make sure you're subscribed to Accused for more cases that'll keep you questioning everything you think you know about justice. The prosecution painted Skylar as a narcissistic teenager who was so obsessed with her appearance and perfect image that she was willing to kill to protect it. They argued that she never wanted the baby and that she deliberately ended its life to maintain her plans for college and her relationship with her boyfriend. The state charged her with aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, child endangerment, and abuse of a corpse. If convicted on the most serious charge, she faced life in prison. But Skylar's defense team told a completely different story. They argued that the baby was stillborn and that Skylar, traumatized and in shock, made poor decisions about how to handle the situation. They claimed she was a scared teenager who panicked and buried the baby to hide what had happened. Her attorneys pointed out that there was no definitive forensic evidence proving the baby had been born alive, much less murdered. The forensic evidence became a major battleground during the trial. The baby's remains had been buried for 2 months before they were discovered, making it extremely difficult to determine cause of death. The prosecution brought in experts who testified about bone fractures and other evidence they claimed showed violence. The defense countered with their own experts who said the evidence was inconclusive and could have other explanations. Throughout the trial, Skylar's behavior in the courtroom became a subject of intense public scrutiny. She cried frequently, sometimes appearing to break down completely. Some observers saw a young woman overwhelmed by grief and trauma. Others saw calculated performance designed to gain sympathy from the jury. The case became a social media sensation, with hashtags like "Justice for Skylar" trending alongside others, demanding her conviction. The trial revealed disturbing details about the family dynamics in the Richardson household. Prosecutors argued that Skylar's mother was obsessed with her daughter's appearance and weight, constantly monitoring what she ate and how she looked. They suggested this pressure contributed to Skylar's desperate desire to hide the pregnancy and return to her pre-pregnancy appearance as quickly as possible. One of the most shocking moments came when prosecutors revealed that Skylar had named the baby Annabelle. She had told investigators she whispered the name to the baby after birth, a detail that the prosecution used to argue the baby was born alive. The defense maintained this showed Skylar's emotional connection to the child, not evidence of murder. After weeks of testimony and national media attention, the case went to the jury. The 7 women and 5 men deliberated for less than 5 hours before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, Skylar appeared confident, even smiling slightly as she waited to hear her fate. The verdict shocked many observers. The jury found Skylar not guilty of aggravated murder, not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and not guilty of child endangerment. She was convicted only of abuse of a corpse, a charge that carried a maximum sentence of 1 year. With time served, she was sentenced to 3 years of probation, which was later ended early by the court. One juror spoke to media after the verdict, explaining that the prosecution simply had not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. They said there was no definitive evidence the baby had been born alive, much less murdered. The forensic evidence was too degraded and inconclusive to support the murder charges. The public reaction was explosive. Those who supported Skylar celebrated what they saw as justice for a young woman who had been overcharged for what was essentially a tragic situation. Critics were outraged, arguing that privilege and appearance had allowed a murderer to escape justice. Social media exploded with debates about whether the outcome would have been the same if Skylar had been from a different background or looked different. The case raised uncomfortable questions about teen pregnancy, mental health, and societal pressure. Experts pointed out that pregnancy denial, while uncommon, is a real psychological phenomenon that can affect young women facing unwanted pregnancies. The stigma around teen pregnancy, especially in small communities, can create desperate situations where young people feel they have no options. Today, Skylar Richardson lives a private life, staying out of the public eye. Her conviction was eventually sealed by the court, allowing her to move forward without the case following her permanently. The case continues to be studied and debated as an example of how complex criminal cases can divide public opinion and challenge our assumptions about guilt and innocence. The Richardson case forces us to confront difficult questions about justice, privilege, and the pressures facing young people today. Was this a case where the system worked correctly, requiring the prosecution to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt? Or did a young woman escape accountability for the ultimate crime because of factors that had nothing to do with the evidence? What's particularly unsettling about this case is how it reveals the gaps between public perception and legal proof. Many people formed strong opinions about Skylar's guilt or innocence based on her appearance, her text messages, and their own beliefs about what a grieving or guilty person should look like. But the jury was tasked with a different question. Had the prosecution proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she had committed murder? But there's much more to this story that reveals just how complex and tragic this case really was. The trial exposed disturbing details about Skylar's mental health that painted a very different picture than the prosecution's narrative of a vain, calculating killer. Skylar had struggled with severe eating disorders since she was 12 years old. Her mother testified that at age 12, she wouldn't buy gum because it had 5 calories. "I didn't even know gum had calories." During cheerleading season, she would starve herself and make herself vomit to lose weight. Her parents had taken her to doctors and therapists who diagnosed her with body dysmorphia, a mental health condition where someone becomes obsessed with perceived flaws in their appearance. By the time of her trial, Skylar's condition had deteriorated severely. Her attorney revealed she weighed only 82 to 89 pounds and was losing her hair from stress and malnutrition. Her mother described having to pin and sew her clothes because she was so thin, saying she's about 90 pounds. She wears kids' clothes. She has no clothes for court. Everything we have to pin everything on her, kind of like sew her in her clothes. The defense revealed even more disturbing information about Skylar's background. Defense psychologist Stuart Basman testified that Skylar had been sexually abused when she was 12 by an older boy. He said the abuse contributed to her developing a mental disorder that left her predisposed to bow to authority figures and unable to stand up for herself. These revelations changed how many people viewed the case. Was this really about a vain teenager trying to maintain her perfect image? Or was it about a severely mentally ill young woman who was too scared and traumatized to seek help during her pregnancy? The forensic evidence that became central to the trial was far from clear-cut. Dr. Susan Brown, the forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy, testified that the death was a homicide but admitted that the cause of death could not be determined because the body had decomposed and only bones were left. This was a crucial admission that would later influence the jury's decision. Even more controversial was testimony about whether the baby's remains had been burned. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Elizabeth Murray initially determined that the baby's bones were partially charred, leading investigators to believe Skylar had tried to cremate the baby. However, Murray later retracted this assertion before Richardson's trial. This retraction was significant because the prosecution had built part of their case around the idea that Skylar had tried to destroy evidence by burning the baby's body. The trial also revealed the extent to which Skylar's relationship with her mother revolved around weight and appearance, creating a toxic dynamic that may have contributed to the tragedy. Text messages shown in court revealed how obsessive her mother, Kim Richardson, was about her daughter losing weight. The defense attorney noted that these texts to her mother about her weight were common in her life, showing a pattern of behavior that had been going on for years. In one particularly disturbing exchange, while Skylar was pregnant and preparing for prom, she texted her mother expressing panic about her appearance, and her mother encouraged her to burn calories to fit into her prom dress. Interestingly, despite the prosecution's focus on Skylar's relationship with her mother throughout the trial, they never called Kim Richardson to testify. This decision raised questions about what her testimony might have revealed about the family dynamics. The defense argued that her mother's obsessive focus on outward appearance contributed to the eating disorders that doctors testified could have caused complications during pregnancy and delivery. The prosecution's case was further complicated by testimony from medical professionals who had treated Skylar. Dr. Casey Boyce, the OB/GYN who had reported Skylar's confession to authorities, testified that she initially believed Richardson was being truthful about the baby being stillborn. However, the prosecution objected when Dr. Boyce began to elaborate on why she found Richardson credible, and the jury was told to disregard that testimony. This moment highlighted the prosecution's concern that medical professionals who had interacted with Skylar might not support their narrative of her as a cold, calculating killer. The case also revealed systemic failures in how the medical community handled Skylar's pregnancy. Despite multiple doctor visits and opportunities for intervention, no medical professional was able to provide the support and guidance that might have prevented this tragedy. Dr. William Andrew had confirmed her pregnancy in April 2017, noting that she became visibly upset at the news, but there was no follow-up care or counseling provided to help her process this information or explore her options. During the defense phase of the trial, more disturbing details emerged about the family dynamics and how they may have contributed to Skylar's inability to seek help. Skylar's father testified that when she was in 8th grade, he noticed serious problems with her eating habits and that her weight would fluctuate dramatically. He described how she didn't eat normally around us, and she was overly concerned with caloric intake. The defense showed the jury to photos taken within 6 months of each other that showed dramatic changes in her appearance, illustrating the severity of her eating disorder. The father's testimony also revealed that his biggest regret was not having an attorney present during his daughter's second police interrogation. He described watching his mentally ill daughter being questioned intensively by experienced detectives without legal representation, and how this led to the damaging statements that formed the core of the prosecution's case. His regret highlighted how unprepared the family was to handle the legal implications of mental health crisis. The jury's decision to acquit on the major charges suggests they found reasonable doubt about whether the baby was even born alive, much less murdered. Without clear forensic evidence of the cause of death, and with the complexity of Skylar's mental health issues, the prosecution's case that this was a calculated murder fell apart. The aftermath of the trial was almost as dramatic as the case itself. The stress of the trial and public scrutiny had taken a severe toll on Skylar. She reportedly lost her hair from stress, and her weight dropped to just 89 pounds. She later said, "Inside, I felt like I was dying." After her conviction on the single charge of corpse abuse, she was immediately sent to receive treatment for her eating disorder. The public reaction to the verdict revealed deep divisions in how people viewed the case. Some saw it as justice for a mentally ill young woman who had been overcharged. Others were outraged, believing that privilege and appearance had allowed a killer to escape punishment. Social media exploded with debates about whether the outcome would have been different if Skylar had come from a different background or looked different. The case raises uncomfortable questions about how we treat mental illness, especially in young women. Skylar's severe eating disorder, history of sexual abuse, and body dysmorphia created a perfect storm of psychological trauma that may have contributed to her ability to hide the pregnancy and her panic response after giving birth. These factors don't excuse her actions, but they do provide context that the prosecution largely ignored. The case also highlights the complex psychology of teen pregnancy and the extreme measures some young people will take to hide it. The pressure to maintain a perfect image, especially in small communities and competitive environments like high school sports, can create situations where teenagers feel they have no support system and no options. When combined with severe mental illness, these pressures can lead to tragic outcomes. Today, Skylar lives a private life away from the public eye. Her conviction was eventually sealed, allowing her to move forward without the case following her permanently. She has received treatment for her eating disorder and has reportedly gained weight and improved her health. The case continues to be studied and debated as an example of how mental illness, family pressure, and societal expectations can create impossible situations for young people. Whether you believe Skylar Richardson was a cold killer who escaped justice or a severely mentally ill teenager who made terrible decisions in an impossible situation, one thing is clear. This case exposed deep divisions in how we think about crime, punishment, mental health, and what justice really means. The truth about what happened that night in May 2017 may never be fully known, but the questions this case raises about our legal system, our treatment of mental illness, and our society's expectations of young women continue to resonate today.